So, hi, Chris. Thank you for coming on my podcast, Get Wealthy with Me. And I'm Sharon, the Modern Savvy CPA. We have Chris, which I never asked your last name. So, you're going to have to tell me what your last name is.
It's Monzon.
Monzon. And you did tell me that because that is the name of your wealth managing company. I think that's a very pretty name.
Thank you. It's very different.
It's very different. Yes. So, can you tell us where the name come from?
Monzon, yeah, it's actually Spanish. So my great grandfather, maybe great great grandfather, immigrated from Spain to Mexico, became a Mexican cowboy. Eventually, my grandparents were born. They were born and raised in Mexico, and they immigrated here to America. We went only across the border from Mexico into San Diego, ended up plopping down in San Diego, and then my father was born here in America. And then my mother's side is actually native to Hawaii. So I have half Hawaiian, half Mexican.
So, you're Polynesian, Hawaiian, because in Hawaii we have the Polynesian thing going, and then that's awesome. Just like everybody else in America, we have all these different cultures. I actually think that having all of that in you makes you more versatile, and also I'm a foodie, so food speaks in all those languages. We can be from all sorts of parts of the world. Once you start talking food and you bring food together, everybody seems to be talking the same language.
Yeah, one of the nice things about being the color brown that I am is that I can blend in anywhere that I go. Like I'll just be whatever you think I am. That's cool with me. I'm all tatted up with Polynesian tattoos, so it makes it a little bit harder. People can see my tattoos, but without that, then I am whatever people want me to be.
So remind me by the end of the podcast, I have a question to ask you about those tattoos. Okay. So I'm gonna try to remember, but my question is definitely gonna be out for the tattoo. So kinda tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how your financial journey began to know that was your gift. And a little bit also about your company while you're at it.
Of course. Yeah, I don't know about my gift, just something I'm passionate about. So again, my father was an immigrant, or my father was first generation here. And when he was growing up, my grandfather and my grandmother was very much the American ethos of you can be anything that you want to be. We moved here for you. But even with that, it was very difficult for them to see any other way to be. So my father ended up joining the Marine Corps because that was his quote unquote way out of the house to finally become an adult. So he joined the Marine Corps. My mom had a very similar thing where she joined the Army.
Oh wow. Two
So,
military parents.
yep. A lot of discipline as a kid. So my father eventually got stationed in Oahu. When my mom was in the Army there, my dad was in the Marines. They ended up saying, "Hey, I like you." We got married, and then my dad got stationed in San Diego. So I was born and raised pretty much near the base of Camp Pendleton. Born in El Toro, which is right next to it, and then raised right off of Camp Pendleton. So when it comes to money, for anyone that doesn't know, enlisted Marines don't make a buttload of money, especially in a place like San Diego that's very expensive. And one thing that I will always credit my dad with is he saw the dysfunction that happens on base in that base housing with those families that are there. And he didn't want that for his kids. So he moved us off base. So when they purchase a house off base, which is expensive to do. And then my mom, after my sister was born, left the Army. So we were just living on one income. I would never say that we were poor because we certainly weren't, but money was a constant issue that I remember growing up as a kid. And, it was always, oh, we can't afford that. Oh, we don't have enough for that. And as a kid, it was always, you didn't know what that meant. So I always took it that like, we're always one step away from losing the house, losing everything.
Right.
I don't know if that was reality, but that's what my brain did.
Because we were always complaining about money, right?
Complaining without action. I remember during 2008, market crash, all this stuff. I'm in high school at this time when this happens, and my dad comes to me. He's like, "We just lost everything," and that was a very formative moment for me because in my brain, it's like we just lost everything. We lost the house. We're like, I don't know what everything is, but it's gone. Come years and years later, I asked my dad about that, and I was like, "Dad, like, what do you mean by we lost everything?" He's like, "Oh, I don't really know." He doesn't even remember saying that comment.
Wow.
But he watched news, and news said that things are bad, so he assumed things were bad. And like, yeah, our house price dropped down, sure, but we weren't planning on selling the house. So like we didn't actually lose
Right.
anything. Yeah, my dad wasn't even invested in his TSP at work. So like he didn't lose anything anywhere.
Right. It's just the mentality of losing everything. And I
Yep.
think when that comes with financial education, right? If we're financially educated, that's where the freedom of not feeling like that will happen, because if you understand what's happening, like, yes, the market is lower, yes, there might have been a housing crash, yes, all these things are happening, how does it affect me, and what do I do to combat that?
Yep.
And if you don't have the education, you are going to listen to all the noise in the news, right? And you're going to be afraid, and that restricts you. So for me, you, you lose your freedom right there. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that? How did you feel when he did that?
No, you're exactly right. And I have tried to, from learning, is don't let external circumstances impact your internal resources.
Right.
So yeah, when he said that to me, like I was like, money was already scary. Like it was already a taboo subject.
Right.
And then when he said that, it's like, oh, money's even scarier. Stock market bad, money bad. Just try to save your way to wealth. So, I graduated high school shortly after 2008. And then it was, let's go to college. Asked my parents, how do you deal with money? What do you do? What do you do to get a degree in? And my parents, again, they joined the military. They had no idea,
Right.
but they heard if you go to college, you get a degree, you will be successful. So
Yes.
I go to college and, 18-year-old kid, I think I was 17 years old. I was the youngest person in my class. So 17-year-old kid, you walk into, a place, they sit you down and say, what do you want to do with the rest of your life?
Uh-huh.
And just like, I don't know. And they're like, well, what do you like? And I was like, I guess I like psychology. And they're like, okay, cool, psychology major. There you go. Boom, you got it. And therefore my psychology degree like started just based off of like a feeling that I had in a moment.
Right.
And not only that, it's like, here's all these loans to get this thing. We don't even know if you like it, but here's all these loans. You do you, like it's gonna all work out. And for that time, like I knew nothing about money, and I just always assumed that eventually I'll figure it out. Eventually down the road, it'll be okay because everyone tells me it's going to be okay. So I go through college. Oh, sorry. Do you have a question?
No, go ahead. I have
So,
to raise my hand if I have a question.
so I go through college, and in my fourth year of psychology, that's when they actually let you sit in with individuals, sit in with people, not to actually do it. You're not allowed to talk to them, but you're allowed to be there.
Right.
So
So
I
you
sit in
kind of
there with a
clearing
marriage.
house now.
Yeah, just like this. So I sit there with a marriage and family therapist, and I'm watching these two people fighting over each other. And the answer is so clear to me that, like, you're both the issue.
Yes.
Like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. And they don't want to
That's
fix
what
the
it is,
problem.
and figure it out.
Yeah. They don't want to fix the problem. They just want a mediator there to complain to.
Yes. 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 I think that's
And
most of our society, don't you think so?
I would agree with that.
We want to complain, but we don't want to have a solution. So, not that I'm saying anything is wrong with the complaining, you're allowed to do that for a little while. And when you're wallowing in the complaint, then that's where you get stuck. So, I want to go back to the college education and the debt, right? Because that's actually a big pet peeve for me. Is because I always think of money as, when I'm using it, it's an investment. Even when I buy my first Louis Vuitton, it was an investment. So, so what I'm investing in is important. Learning what the return on my investment in is important. And you are a financial guy. You talk about that all the time, right? Return on investments. Education, in my opinion, because as an Indian American, we believe in investing in three different things. That's a generational thing. We believe in investing in education. So that's one of the things that if we're allowed to have, we do it. We believe in investing in gold because if you've seen any Indian people, you know how much they like their gold.
Yeah.
And then if you and the third thing is land. So land, which is real estate to us, is a universal language. No matter where you're from, you can be from the poorest places in Africa, And if you have a piece of land, you feel good about it. It's an investment for you. So when we were growing up, real estate, the ins and outs of real estate was a different story, but we knew real estate was the investment that was sure, that was solid. So that was always something that I grew up with, and all Indians will tell you that that's something that most of them grew up with. But a lot of us now, a lot of us here in America, we don't think of education as an investment and what the return on the investment is. We don't teach that in our society. So, what are your thoughts on your generation, meaning millennials, Gen Zs, and the generations that are coming up, on investment and education and the cost of education?
Yeah, so that's a pretty deep question. I think the biggest issue was that at one point the government decided that they were going to back any loan that came out towards education, towards higher education. We're going to back any loan.
Right.
So you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. So every single college went, hey, if no matter what price we want to say, people can get a loan for it to pay us, we're going to jack up the prices. And you saw that happen over and over and over again, year after year, and to the point that degrees really don't mean much in the modern age. Now, I agree. If you want to go and you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a brain surgeon, if you don't have a degree, I'm not going to let you touch me. So there are certain things that you need that education in. But there are many things, like if you want to go and do videography or you want to be a marketer, you can actually attain those skills without having to go to college, without the fancy degree. And I think that our civilization is finally starting to wise up that having the degree, that piece of paper, legitimately means nothing other than you can deal with showing up to a class for 4 years, drunk or high out of your mind, but you can at least deal with the system. But I think what most employers are now looking for is, do you actually have the skills? I don't care if you have the paper. Do you have the skills? How much value can you bring to me? So my views on education is, if the path you need to go in requires an education, then go get the education. But if that path does not require education, there's no reason to get the education until you're ready for it. I don't think that education needs to be, or traditional college is a must.
So that's the other subject, right? So I agree with you that, like, when I'm talking to my kids, they need to have a career. What path you go through to get to that career can be different for everyone. But even if you choose the path of a university or college, it's only, in my opinion, maybe 30 or 40% of what your needs are for your career. So, and all the millennials that I speak to that have gone through college and are in the workforce and understand all these different things, and now they're hiring. Millennials are the ones that are the hiring managers. They're telling me that now. They're saying to me, I have a 30-something-year-old nephew that works in Austin, Texas for a large company. And he says, when I'm hiring, I look for, yes, the degree, not so much where the degree is coming from, depending on what I'm hiring for. But yes, I'm looking for he says, you can train anyone to do anything, but I'm looking for the mentality, the right mentality, the ability to think outside of the box. Where are we going with these things? The versatileness, could be frontward facing, like those type of things that they're looking for. So those are things you cannot teach.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come with that. So the education is great. No, I am not knocking education at all. I'm just saying, specifically, what is it going to cost you for this career, and what will you be making once you're done, once you're ready to get this career? So you want to be an accountant, for example. I'm an accountant. I don't think you need to be a fancy school, because I didn't go to a fancy school, and my friends that have gone to fancy school are still paying off their loans in their 40s. And that, if you want to be an accountant, what type of accountant you want to be, explore those options, see what your market is, how much will you be making, how much will you owe when you graduate, so you know what type of lifestyle that you're going to be living. If you're going to come out with $300,000 in debt, that's a mortgage. So you're going to have to pay that mortgage for a while. Will your career that you're studying support that? When will you be able to buy a house? So I think your generation, and I'd like to hear more from you, are you guys experiencing that now with the loans that you've already come out with?
I was very blessed in that I always had a fear of not having enough. Like I've
Right.
always had like that resource guarding mentality. So taking out debt, all that stuff was always terrifying to me. So I knew when I went to college that I was going to go to a junior college for 2 years, get
Right.
all the GE done, and then transfer to quote unquote a big boy college. And even when I did, I went to Cal State Long Beach, which was voted the best in terms of education to price. When
Right.
I was in school, my education was, I think, $3,000 a semester.
Right.
It was the best education you could
Right.
get for
For the
that
money.
low of a price.
Yeah.
So I was always like, money comes first. So I was very lucky to be able to graduate without any debt, but it took conscious effort to have to do that, to have to make those decisions. And I think this is one of the big issues that I see with people is they go through life based off their feelings. Oh, I feel that this will be okay. I feel that I want this career, but they actually don't know anything, but they believe their feelings as fact.
Right.
And when it comes to finances, it gets a lot harder because we're talking about, well, what's this loan that you're going to take out? What does that mean at the end? What's your return on investment? If you take this college loan, what kind of job are you going to get? And
Right.
how many of us, and any millennial who's listening can say, like, how many of us, when we were going through college, just said, future me will figure that out. Like that's just a feeling. That's that person's problem to deal with.
Yeah. Do you see that a lot of the millennials that you've been around and that are your friends took a different path than you in terms of, so first of all, I want to address the scarcity mentality. I kind of call it the immigrant mentality.
Yep.
Maybe it's a boomer mentality. I don't know, but we always believe I come with, I have to deprive myself, grossly deprive myself
Mm-hmm.
to to make it. You know, it has to feel that way. I am more, now what I teach my kids is the moderation mentality, right? You don't need to bring the immigrant mentality from your grandparents and like literally will penny ante the poor pool guy or whatever it is. But you also don't need to have that instant gratification mentality where you need everything now. You're not only living a year, you have live a whole lifetime. You have
Yeah.
time. So the moderation mentality is what I've taught my kids, and I teach financially, because yes, you can enjoy a cup of Starbucks for $8 once a week, maybe. Um, but if you're having an $8 Starbucks every day and every month all year long, opportunity cost, right? So you're giving up something else when you're doing that. So you have to realize that you can't have everything all at once. If you want to enjoy that Starbucks, that might be your instant gratification, but you're giving up something along the line to get that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my mentality. So my thing is not that you shouldn't have that Starbucks, but you should understand. Moderation is, you need to understand that if you're having this now, you can't have it later. You're already consuming it now. Money is, if it's consumed all right now, there will be none left for later.
So one of the biggest things that I love to study is the human mind. And when you study the human mind, you end up going into philosophies, Eastern tradition, Western tradition. I really like Buddhism and Stoicism. And in Buddhism, the Buddha talks a lot about the middle way, and that anything taken to an extreme is pathological, is a detriment to you.
Yep,
You can have too much oxygen, you can have too much water, and that will kill you. It's the
absolutely.
same thing for, yes, you need to save for tomorrow, and you need to live for today. And the hardest thing is our brain wants us to just go to one extreme because it's calorically easier to just have an extreme. I'm going to spend all my money or I'm going to save all my money. It's either YOLO or like I'm going to save it all because it could all go tomorrow.
Right.
And it's so hard because the middle isn't defined.
No.
It changes based off of everyone, and you need to find your middle path. Because if we're looking outside to find out what is correct, what is true, what is the logos, it's impossible to look outside because no one actually knows.
Right. Right.
They only know their truth.
Right. And you hit it on the point. Yeah, that's also one of my other sayings is too much of anything is no good. you know, even with food, even with medicine, even like you said, with water, with air, you know, too much of anything is no good. So it doesn't matter what it is. To me, even money, too much money is no good, because then it gets to different parts of your head, and, you know, you might not know what to do with it. You end up fighting with it. So if you're not doing it right and consciously, then too much of it is no good.
Mhm.
So when we talked on your podcast, which we filmed before this, we did go through a lot of the financial aspects of things and understanding. And you did mention, so I was taking note on your psychology degree. So that is why I want to go into, because I believe that money is very psychological. What are
Yes.
your thoughts on that?
I'm very well known for saying this. Personal finance is far more personal than it is finance.
I love it. I love it.
And it's the reason that I do my podcast, the reason I started it is because when I was looking for financial education, again, going back to my childhood, I never learned about money. I never knew anything about money. Money scared the living hell out of me until I finally decided to look into the belly of the beast and realize that it was like the monster that I thought was in the corner about to attack me. When you actually looked at it, it was just a kitten. Like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. But in my brain, I made it out to be this terrible thing.
Right.
So, yes, as we look more into the psychology, I forget, what was your question?
I love it. You're getting into your head and you're really getting passionate, and I'm loving it. I'm all about the passion. So my question was sort of exploring the psychology of money, right? That it is a, for me, even before I teach you. So I'll go into a little bit about my personal finance side, right? People are like, okay, do you start with budgeting? I'm like, yes, but it's a non-traditional budgeting way. Like, I mean, I'm sure you know who Dave Ramsey are and all of these other people are out there. They look at money as mechanics, right? And I don't think you can get to the mechanic without the motivation and the mindset.
Yes.
So that has to do with psychology. So I don't even talk about the mechanics unless we're talking about the motivation and the mindset. So what I have people do before they even start on their budgeting, I call it a spending plan, not a budget,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a scary word for people. Is I have them track the last 3 months. What did they do with their money the last 3 months? How did you spend it? Because we spend unconsciously all the time. Our spending plan is unconscious unless we're looking at it. Whether it's a scarcity mindset, it's still unconscious because we're not looking at it. We're just saying, okay, we have to hold on to this squirrel. This squirrel has to hold on to this nut because I don't know what's happening, and you're not enjoying that nut. So money is meant to help us enjoy it. So when we have that scarcity mindset, we're scared out of our mind. So we'll save as much. And then we're on the oblivious mindset, which is a scary mindset too. We're scared to even look at what we're spending it on. So it's scary both ways. So the point is that I have them track the last 3 months and then analyze it. This is what you did the last 3 months. Is this what you wanted or intended to do? If it is, it's great. Let's work your budget from there, right? If it isn't, well, I didn't want to spend this much on coffee, and I didn't want to do this, and let's change that. Let's make our budget, our spending plan based on what you did, because this is what you did. I, you know, because a lot of times, oh, I didn't do, I can't, this is whatever. They're denial that comes with it. So no, this is what you did the last 3 months. Is this how you want to do it? Let's consciously do it. Whatever you want to do, like you and I talked about, right? That whatever we're doing, we need to be. Is that what we want to do? Are we choosing that path, right? So how do you talk to people about budgeting or their spending plan?
So I'm going to give you a quote from Carl Jung, who is the father of analytical psychology. And it's, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct our life and we will call it fate. So the first thing I do, just like you in my coaching programs, before we get into the budgeting, before we get into the mechanics of how money works, the physics of finance, we first need to figure out what's going on in your mindset.
Right.
And what most people don't know is everything about who you are today stems from your childhood.
Yes.
Typically, people's money formations, the way they're going to be with money, whether that be the YOLO person or the person that's going to hoard everything like a dragon, is formed by the age of 7 years old. So you have unconsciously inside of you, and I'm going to say the age of 1 probably doesn't mean anything. Age of 2 probably doesn't mean anything. So from the ages of 3 to 7, you have 4 or 5 years there that are the most important parts of what your schema is for how money works.
Schema. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what I do in my first meetings is we're going back into the past and we're delving deep into why do you think the way that you do about money? What did your parents say? What did society say? What did your grandpa say? What did your uncle say in a passing remark that you internalized and believed to be truth? Because as a child, you don't know what truth is. You're just going based off whoever happens to be near you and say stuff.
Right.
So we need to dive deep into that to make the unconscious conscious, so that when that feeling comes up, because whenever you're spending money, whenever you're doing anything, it's trying to fill a core need.
Right.
We need to figure that out. So before we get into the budget, before we get anything, it's figuring out why are you the way that you are. And those are deep conversations that you have to be a bit qualified to be able to do, because there's a lot of tears typically, and you also need to be willing to go into the darkness with somebody, into their life, and also know that you can't leave them in the deep end of the pool. You need to be able to pull them out. So
Right.
by the time they leave, they feel good about it, because there's too many people that don't know what they're doing. They'll take you down deep into that depth to see like all the bad stuff, and they're like, okay, bye. And then they leave you down there. And then when they leave the conversation, they're like, he just took me here and now he left me here and I don't know what to do. So
Right.
it takes some like conscious effort and guidance, which is where I rely on my psychology degree to be able to go down into there. I'm not a therapist. I would never call myself a therapist, but be able to go down there to figure out what's going on and then be able to bring it up. Not that that changes behavior immediately, but at least now the next time you feel like, oh, I have this impulse to go buy a coffee, I have this impulse to buy this bag, you understand where it's coming from.
Right.
And typically, not always, but typically it comes from the feeling of you're not enough.
So, I'm gonna go a little further with that, right? When you do, so for me, pictures and number pictures is what I look at all the time. So, when you're thinking something, it's one thing, but when you see it laid out in front of you, it's something else, right? So I go even further to say that, okay, we dig deep down to see, and if I tell you that this is the way you are, you're not gonna believe me.
Mhm.
So that's why I go through the tracking of the system and say, okay, listen, this is what you've done, right? We're not making this budget. We're not having an argument of what amount is what. This is what you've done. This is how you've done it unconsciously, whatever you're doing it with. I will go further to say, though, I will challenge you a little bit there to say that, yes, most of who you are at your schema or whatever, I don't have a psychology degree, so I'm not going to go into that. And is at a certain point, but there is nature and there's nurture.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that people can change.
Of course.
We've talked about where how change happens, right? And you have to want to. So finding a place to see how you can change is a good point. But this is what you and I are trying to teach the culture that we are in, that this is where you're at, this is where your mindset is. Now it's up to you to intentionally, excuse me, to intentionally pick a different way. So where you are doesn't have to be where you are.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you are. Now you decide where you want to go in terms of money. What do you feel about that? What are your thoughts on that?
No, you're exactly right. And when I was talking about my coaching program, that's only where we start.
Right.
So in 2011, we discovered as a human being, we were able to actually see neuroplasticity happen. We're actually able to see the brain change and be able to change, but it has to change consciously. The brain will continue to stay the way that it is as long as it can. Your brain's job is not to grow, it's to survive. That's it. That all that matters is for you to have kids that have kids. That's the only goal your brain has. So when I start out with people and we go deep into this money thing, I also have financial planning tools as a financial advisor. So I'm able to, while we're going into that in these meetings, I'm able to get them to put in their credit cards, all that stuff. And I can get a year's or 3 years worth of data on their exact spending.
Right.
And what I think the big issue is that comes to money is it's such a scary thing that people just base
All right.
their feelings. Yeah, it's terrifying,
Yeah.
but they base their feeling or base their decisions based off of their feelings. And your feelings are not facts.
Right.
But people take one thing away from today, I would hope they know that you can't trust your feelings. So what I call it is the physics of finance. And that is where we actually look at your spending. This is how much you've spent. You can't deny, you can't do anything. This is the physics. This is ground truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have financial planning tools that I use to say, where do you want to go? And
Right.
then from there, rather than doing Monte Carlo simulations and all this stuff that, hey, if you change all of these factors, this is where you're going to end up. What I show them is if you keep on the same path, this is where you will end up,
Right.
most likely.
That's
And
a
then that prompts change.
yes. I like that. I like that point. And as a financial advisor that deals a lot with wealth management, I think that's a great way. Okay, if you stay on this path, this is where you're going to be in this year or this year or this year, and that's the picture. So that's my. What are your thoughts on all the other financial literacy people out there? How they teach money and your generation, not mine, your generation with the millennials and the younger, um how are we succeeding and how are we failing with these generations? What do we need to do and what have we done right or wrong?
I think that, and it depends, right? Because there's so many people, it depends on who you're listening to. So I don't know what our audience members are listening to even give them that. But
Right.
in general, what I find is that too many people focus on the numbers aspect, on the specifics of what you're supposed to do, rather than the mindset that gets you there. They're
Right.
trying to teach you how to have $1 million, and I'm trying to teach you how to make $1 million. Because once you make $1 million, you can do it again and again and again.
Right.
So the way I've tried to conceive it in my head is where they're just talking about the actual money side, like this is what you need to do, here are the steps. I'm trying to get you to be able to play the game on easy mode
Right.
by fixing your brain. So the way that a normal traditional advisor works, if they do financial planning, and I know because I used to do this and I had to go through it for years to realize that what I was doing was wrong, is people would come in and we would meet and they're like, I want a financial plan. Okay, cool. How much money do you want a year? How much do you want to have to retire? All this stuff. And it's no different than going up to a 4-year-old and asking them the question, what would make you happy? How much money do you need to make you happy? And a 4-year-old will be like, I don't know, I want like 60 go-gurts and $1,000.
Yes.
It's the exact same thing when you ask an adult. They don't say, I want 50 go-gurts. They say something like, I want $150,000 a year.
Yes.
Okay, where'd you get that number?
My ass.
Yeah, I don't know. They pulled it out of the sky the same way the kid thought that if I get 50 go-gurts, I'll be okay. At least the kid with 50 go-gurts has something that has nutritional value. We'll call it nutritional value in quotes.
Yes.
Like he's got something worth it. So I would do this with people, go through this exercise, and then by the end of it, I still have some back here. I give them this nice leather folder of, hey, if you do all of these changes, you start saving this amount of income, you put it to these places, invest it here, get this life insurance, get all these things, you will be financially set. And then I give them their paperwork and I say, all right, bye. I'll see you in a few years. 3 months later, they come back and be like, hey, Chris, we need to go back and change everything because I lost my job or because I couldn't actually stick to this savings rate. I was able to fix their money, yes, but I didn't fix them.
Right.
And without fixing them, no matter what I did, no matter how great the situation looked on paper, they weren't able to connect with that person 50 years in the future that was going to have to benefit, because that meant today they had to suffer.
Right.
There's so many versions of ourselves. We're not this is one entity. You're not your brain, you're not your body, you're not your mind, you're not anything, but we think we are. So there's the narrative self, there's the experiencing self, and then there's the future self. The narrative self, that's the person who you want to be. That's the person that you tell yourself that you are. There's the experiencing self that actually has to do it today.
Right.
And then there's, your past self, the person who has gone through everything. So past me could say, I really want to save for my future. Narrative me could say, yeah, I'm really glad that he saved for his future. But current experiencing me, the me right now, is the one that has to deprive himself in order for narrative me, past me, and future me to be happy.
Right.
When most people are too focused on making themselves right now happy,
Right.
without remembering that your narrative self and your future self are both you.
Right. Right. So that comes back to our coming down to again moderation. All these people are us, right?
Mhm.
We can't discount the past because that's our person. We can't discount the present because that's the one that's making the most effect on us now. But we also are going to live forever. We're not only living for this one day. The future will become the present, and what happens then?
Yeah.
So if we're moderate about everything, and we're on that moderation line, or we try to keep on that line, then that is personally how I keep myself content. You
Yeah.
know, um,
It's so hard
so
because you don't know what that is. Like everyone's is different. You can't like look to your neighbor and be like, how did you do it? Because
right,
what might work for them might not work for me.
absolutely, yep. So coming down, I have two more questions for you. Is what are you looking to in terms of the podcast that you do? Tell us a little bit about what your podcast is
Mhm.
and how we find you and things like that. And what are your priorities for your future self? What do you want to do next? Of course, next will be coming on the podcast in a next season, right? Coming on the Get Wealthy with Me podcast with the Modern Savvy CPA.
Of
And then
course.
what are your plans? What are your future plans?
So for the podcast, the reason I started the podcast was I wish that I had a teacher who was willing to talk about the feelings, willing to talk about all the things that you were going to go through on the path to financial independence. When I was getting started, it was everyone focused on the numbers.
Right,
And whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So whenever I would learn like, hey, you can invest this way, I'd be like, yeah, well, that's for those people. And what that happened to do is it was just my mindset that I had to fix.
right,
So the reason that I started the podcast, and to go back to your question earlier, what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong in terms of podcast to stand and like, personal development money wise, what are we doing right? We focus too much on the money aspect rather than what you need to do to get there. So what I found is that there aren't any men, especially, who are willing to talk about the feelings, talk about this is what you're going to go through. This is what I went through. This is why it's hard. And this is how you stick on the path to being the best version of yourself.
right,
Everyone's afraid to talk about the feelings, but we are nothing but feelings. Like the algorithms that run in our brain are felt as feelings. So
right,
we all have them, regardless if you want to stuff them down or not. They're there. So that's what I try to do on my podcast. So my goal for the podcast is to show men, I guess more specifically, but all people, that there's another way to do money right.
right,
And whatever way you want to find as your way is correct.
right.
As
Awesome.
long as you feel happy, as long as you feel contentment, then it's right. And whoever tells you that you're wrong just means that they're so uncertain in their reality of what is right that they feel that they have to attack you.
Right,
And I think that's what real truth is that people will, it's if I invest my money this way, but you invest your money a different way, most people will attack that. Oh, you're dumb for even
right,
thinking about that.
right,
But the only reason they attack is because they feel like you're telling them that they're not enough, or that what they're doing is the wrong way.
right.
I'll introduce a concept to you if you don't mind.
Sure.
That there are three different types of financial people online who try to tell you that their way is right. And I'll call them the investor, the entrepreneur, and then the optimizer. So the investor is someone who looks at the S&P 500 standard return of 9 or 10% per year and they scoff at that. And they're like, that's really dumb. I get 20% all day long.
Right,
There's the entrepreneur who says like 10%, that's dumb. I'm going to go and create a company. It's going to bring me back 10 times what I put into it. And then there's the optimizer. The optimizer is the person who focuses on how much money they're making. They focus on how much money they're spending, and they know with enough time and commitment and dedication that they can be financially well off. And each one of these people call the other person dumb, that they don't know what they're doing. But for the investor, I can pull a 13F and I can show you exactly what Warren Buffett invested in last quarter.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you have his temperament, his ability, and more importantly, his time horizon to be able to be successful.
Right.
Same with the entrepreneur. We can read Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg's, Elon Musk's, Bezos's autobiographies and see exactly what they did, but you don't have the timing, the skill, the talent, or the situation to have that.
Right.
So I teach the optimizer path, because the optimizer path, in 99% of future realities, you will be successful.
Right.
The only reality doesn't work out is nuclear apocalypse, and there's nothing I can do about that.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. I love that. Can you tell us how we can reach you, what we need to listen to in terms of where do we find you and your podcast? And then I love that you have a coaching program. Overachievers like us always have like a few different avenues of things that we're doing because we believe in making society a better place.
You try your best. It also probably comes in with that deprivation mindset of like, it's all going to go away tomorrow, so I better diversify. But that's an issue for me to have to deal with internally, right? But places to find me is the FI Guys, the FIGuys.com. FI stands for Financial Independence. So that's on all streaming podcast platforms. It's also on YouTube if you want to see my terrible face. But in addition to that, I also have a company. It's called Monzon Wealth. And just to spell that, it's MONZON, like zebra ON, Monzon, common spelling, wealth.com. And from there, you can look about my coaching programs, everything that I do. I'm pretty much available on all platforms. So you can always reach out. If you want to go to Monzon Wealth, there's a contact us. You can schedule a free appointment right there.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, Chris, it was a pleasure.
You want to talk about tattoos?
Oh, yes. Thank you. So I'm turning 50 in 21 days, 22 days, and I don't have a tattoo. A lot of Gen Zs, Gen Xs don't have tattoos, but the ones that do, they have a lot. So I am going to be getting my first tattoo in about a month.
Nice.
Maybe I'll have Chala film it. I don't know. I'm a little on the fence with that. But where do you think I should get a tattoo?
Oh, well, it depends on the tattoo. That's the real question.
Okay. What would you recommend for a 50-year-old Gen Xer who wants to break all of that funny rules? Because this is the year of 50 for me. I'm celebrating all year long. And one of the things that I'm going to do is get a tattoo.
That's cool. What I would say is that it's going to be on your body for the rest of your life. So it needs to be something that you can see yourself. So what I did with my tattoos, right? This tattoo, it goes down my left arm, it goes through my chest and all the way onto my back. It's a huge tattoo. So I wanted to be sure that it was a tattoo that I was going to want. So what I recommend to people who are going to get a tattoo is write it down and say, like, this is the tattoo I want. If you still want that tattoo in a year, go for it. But
I've
don't
been thinking about this for a long time.
So then what's the tattoo? What design do you want? Because
Okay, so let me tell you what my thoughts are. And you're probably going to laugh because I'm like your older sister, maybe, right? I would like a cross, and either a cross here or a cross here on my hand.
Okay.
And then the next one I'm getting is a tramp stamp.
Cool. So
Chala is blushing because she didn't think I was going to say that online.
That's cool. So if it was me and I was going to get a cross, I think the wrist right here is a super cool reason. The one thing you need to do when you're getting tattoos, you need to make sure the spacing is right. So what I think that a lot of females do is they'll get like a tattoo like right here on the center of their bicep, like a little cross or a little cute thing. But now there's all this other real estate that doesn't make sense.
Right.
When you do it here on the wrist, it's such a small area that it makes sense. The hands are kind of scary in case you ever need to go into like another corporate setting.
Right.
Getting your hands done. I always thought that behind the ear for the cross is a good spot too. Yeah. And then tramp stamp, yeah, you do you.
Okay, so the risk is like here. So I'm on point. I was thinking here or here.
I would do it on the backside.
You would do it on the backside. All right, I'm going to take that advice. So when I do get the tattoo, I'm sending you some pics on the cross one.
Yeah, and just, enjoy it, breathe through the pain, and, it's not that bad.
Awesome. I am looking forward to spending more time getting to know you, and again, getting to know each other, and whether we're going to meet sometime in person or whether we do another podcast together or just brainstorm on ideas.
That sounds wonderful.
thank you for coming on Get Wealthy with me, and we will be in touch.
Perfect. Thank you
Thank
so much.
Bye.
Later.